The summons arrives without drama, which somehow makes it worse. Irene Holt reads it 3 times, as if repetition might cause the words to apologize and leave. Instead, the message simply blinks at him from the air between his fingers, politely informing him that the Queen requests his presence on the glass balcony at orbital noon. The phrase requests is doing heroic work. Irene has learned that when a palace capable of bending spacetime asks you for anything, the safest response is to comply before it escalates into a suggestion delivered by gravity itself. He adjusts his collar, which immediately tightens in response, and mutters that he was only trying to look professional. The palace hears everything. It always does. As he walks, the floor shifts subtly to keep him centered, a courtesy he never asked for. Somewhere deep in the architecture, a machine hums in a key that makes his teeth itch. He tells himself it is probably nothing dangerous, just the sound of alien technology doing whatever alien technology does when it wants to feel important. The balcony opens before him without ceremony. No doors, no fanfare, just the sudden presence of open space and the sense that the universe has leaned closer to watch. The dying sun hangs nearby, flaring unpredictably, as if offended by its own mortality. Warships drift beyond the nebula in disciplined silence, their formation so precise it feels almost smug. Queen Eltheria stands near the edge, her posture relaxed in a way that suggests centuries of practice. She looks human enough that Irene's brain insists on treating her as such, until his eyes catch the elegant length of her ears, tapering gently back through her hair. It is a small difference, but it does a lot of work. She turns as he approaches, and her expression carries the calm of someone who knows exactly how this meeting will unfold, even if she has no intention of explaining it yet. Between them stands a child. Irene stops. The palace floor does not anticipate this and nearly overshoots him before correcting itself. The child is young, quiet, and watching him with an intensity that feels deeply personal. Not curious, assessing. Irene has faced hostile councils, untranslated threats, and one unfortunate incident involving carnivorous algae, but this is somehow worse. He clears his throat. It echoes, then apologizes by dampening the sound. "Your Majesty," he says, opting for formality because anything else might cause his mouth to say something irreversible. "You sent for me." "Yes," Eltheria replies. Her voice is even, almost gentle. "Thank you for coming promptly. Some humans take longer when they suspect destiny is involved. I came promptly because the message didn't include an option to say no," Irene says before he can stop himself. He winces internally. So much for diplomacy. Eltheria smiles faintly. "You are still honest under pressure. That is reassuring." The child tilts their head. The motion is small, but it lands like a punch to the chest. Irene has seen that exact movement before, reflected back at him from lab glass when he is puzzling over a problem that refuses to behave. He resists the urge to crouch down and ask something catastrophically inappropriate. Beyond the balcony, the warships adjust position. The movement sends a low vibration through the structure like a distant drumbeat. Irene gestures vaguely toward the sky. "I assume this isn't a social call. Your fleet looks tense." "They are waiting," Eltheria says, "much like you." "That makes one of us trained for it," Irene replies. "I specialize in languages, not existential moments. You have always been better at them than you think." The palace shifts again, a subtle change in light and pressure that suggests it is paying attention. Irene feels an old memory brush against his thoughts, uninvited. A frontier moon, a half-forgotten temple. Long nights aboard a research vessel where the translation software gave up and displayed a polite error symbol, forcing conversation to rely on tone, gestures, and increasingly bad jokes about who would suffocate first if the hull failed. He swallows. If this is about the ceasefire talks from years ago, I should clarify that anything I said after the gravity stabilizer malfunction should not be considered legally binding. The child makes a sound. Not quite a laugh, but close enough that Irene feels a strange, unwarranted surge of relief. Eltheria watches him carefully. "You taught them that joke," she says. "I teach a lot of people bad jokes," Irene says. "It's a coping mechanism." The silence stretches, not hostile, just full. The palace air seems thicker, as if waiting for something to be acknowledged. Irene becomes acutely aware of his hands, his posture, the fact that he has no idea where to stand in relation to a queen and a child who feels uncomfortably familiar. Outside, banners ripple in artificial wind. Inside, Irene's mind races ahead, assembling theories he does not want to test. He looks at the child again, and the child looks back, unblinking, as if recognizing him in a way that bypasses language entirely. "Well," Irene says weakly, "because someone has to break the moment, and it might as well be him. This is new." "Yes," Eltheria agrees, "it is." Nothing more is said, but the space between them feels charged, like the second before a translation finally resolves and reveals a meaning you cannot take back. The universe hums, patient and amused, and Irene Holt stands on a glass balcony at the edge of a war, realizing that some discoveries arrive long after the research is done. Irene does not remember sitting down, only that at some point the palace decides he should be seated and provides a chair that grows out of the floor with quiet confidence. He accepts this without comment. Arguing with furniture that can rewrite local gravity feels like a losing strategy. The child remains standing, close enough that Irene can feel a strange pressure in the air, not unpleasant, just persistent, like a thought he keeps almost remembering. Eltheria does not sit. She rarely does when something important is about to surface. Irene knows this without knowing how he knows it, which irritates him on a professional level. Forgotten knowledge is a personal insult. "You are trying very hard not to think," she says. "I'm thinking very hard about not thinking," Irene replies. It's a subtle distinction, but humans are good at it. The child watches him as if this explanation is being filed away for future reference. Irene gives an awkward half-smile, the one he uses on customs officers and mildly hostile diplomats. The palace hum deepens. A thin lattice of light drifts through the air, assembling itself into hovering symbols before dissolving again. Irene recognizes the pattern, or rather, his implant does, and feeds him a delayed sense of familiarity. Memory suppression protocol inactive but resentful. "Oh no," he mutters. "You found the locked files." "I did not," Eltheria says. "You did long ago. I merely respected the choice." "That was generous," Irene says. "Most people I know would have snooped immediately. Most people you know do not govern star systems." "That's fair," he concedes. "Still, I'd like to formally apologize to my past self for whatever he thought was a good idea." The lattice reforms briefly, then flickers out. With it comes a rush of sensation, not images exactly, but fragments. Artificial night cycles aboard a research vessel that never flew straight. A shared argument with a ship computer that insisted it was not sarcastic. The way ceasefire talks dissolved into something else after the official translators failed, and neither of them bothered to fix them right away. Irene exhales slowly. "I remember the moon," he says. "I remember the temple and the bad air filters and the time you laughed for 5 full minutes because I tried to bow and misjudged the gravity." The child's eyes widen a fraction. Eltheria's expression softens despite herself. "You blamed the floor," she says. "It was aggressively slanted," Irene replies. "Hostile architecture. That was your phrase." He rubs his face. "I should have known memory locks never hold forever. They just wait." The warships outside shift again. A tactical display blooms briefly at the edge of his vision, then fades, denied full access. The palace is polite but firm about his clearance. The child takes a step closer. Irene feels it again, that sense of recognition, now threaded with something else. A resonance. His implant pings quietly, confused, then gives up. "Well," he says, aiming for lightness and missing slightly. "If this is the part where you tell me something life-altering, I'd like to request a countdown." Humans appreciate warning. The child speaks before Eltheria can respond. The voice is clear, calm, and far too certain for someone so small. You already know, the child says. Irene blinks. That's unfair. I specialize in knowing things slowly. Eltheria closes her eyes briefly, then opens them. They are perceptive. Clearly, Irene says, I'm intimidated. The child studies him, then tilts their head again, that same familiar angle. You tell jokes when you are afraid, they say. You did it before. I still do, Irene replies. It's cheaper than therapy. Something in the air shifts. Not tension exactly, more like alignment. The palace hum settles into a new rhythm. Irene feels the weight of years he did not live, moments he missed without knowing there was something to miss. I didn't leave, he says quietly, not because I wanted to. I know, Eltheria says, I sent you away. He looks at her, then really looks, and hears the unspoken words beneath the spoken ones. Protection, consequence, survival. That explains the memory locks, he says, and the sudden reassignment to a linguistics project so dull it nearly killed me. I needed you alive, she says simply. The child reaches out, hesitates, then places a small hand against Irene's arm. The contact sends a strange warmth through him, not electrical, not psychic, just certain. You came back, the child says. So it worked. Irene swallows. I have to say, this is not how I imagined my day. Your imagination is limited, Eltheria says dryly. That's comforting coming from you. Outside, the dying sun flares again, light washing across the balcony. Inside, something settles. Not resolved, not named, but present and undeniable. Irene lets out a shaky breath and manages a smile that feels real. All right, he says. I don't know what happens next, but I'm here. And I'm not very good at leaving. The child nods, satisfied, as if this is the correct answer. The palace decides to involve itself again, which Irene has come to recognize as a low, anticipatory hum followed by things becoming more complicated. Light folds inward near the balcony rail, resolving into a cluster of hovering projections that flicker with symbols his implant refuses to translate without permission. He takes that personally. Before anything else happens, he says, raising a hand, I would like to officially note that no one has explained why the entire palace feels like it's holding its breath. It is, Eltheria says. So are the fleets. Good, Irene replies. I hate being the only anxious one in a room. It feels narcissistic. The child's mouth twitches, not quite a smile, progress. Beyond the glass, the warships complete another adjustment, this one less ceremonial and more purposeful. The palace responds by shifting its internal gravity a fraction, enough that Irene's chair slides half a centimeter closer to the child. He eyes it suspiciously. I didn't consent to symbolic furniture movement, he mutters. The palace disagrees, Eltheria says. Of course it does. The projections stabilize, forming a lattice of softly rotating glyphs. Irene recognizes enough patterns to know what they represent, even if the details remain locked. Predictive modeling, probability branching, the kind of technology that pretends the future is polite enough to be charted. The child steps forward, standing directly in front of him now. Up close, the resemblance is no longer subtle. It is not a mirror, but it rhymes in a way that makes Irene's chest feel tight. You are thinking too loudly, the child says. I'm human, Irene replies. That's as quiet as we get. They consider this. You could try counting. I've tried that. I get distracted around 7. Eltheria watches them with an expression Irene cannot quite read. Not fear, not regret. Something steadier. He suspects it took a long time to build. The councils will want confirmation, she says. They prefer certainty before war. Irene winces. Of course they do. Because nothing says stability like making life-altering decisions based on data right before everyone starts shooting. The projections pulse as if offended. They will request a lineage convergence, Eltheria continues. It is invasive. How invasive? Irene asks. Because I've already had a machine scan my brain while I was awake and making jokes about it. More personal than that. Fantastic, he says. I always wanted to be a diplomatic incident. The child reaches out again, this time without hesitation, fingers brushing his sleeve. The contact brings that same warmth, stronger now, threaded with something like recognition and something like humor. You will survive, the child says. You always do. That's not comforting, Irene says. That sounds like foreshadowing. A faint ripple of amusement moves through the air. The palace lights shift subtly, brightening in a way that feels almost encouraging. Irene sighs. All right, he says. Let's assume the councils get their certainty. What happens to the war? Eltheria does not answer immediately. Outside, a distant flash marks a test discharge from one of the outer fleets. The sound arrives seconds later, a low vibration that travels through the balcony and into Irene's bones. That depends, she says finally, on whether they see you as leverage or liability. Ah, Irene says. The two L's of politics. The child looks between them. They will listen, they say, some of them. That's still more than I usually get, Irene replies. I'll take it. A new projection flares to life, this one unmistakably a timeline. Irene's implant tugs at his perception, offering fragments of probability. In several of them, he is not present for very long. He laughs, a short, surprised sound. Wow, I'm really popular in the versions where I die early. That is usually how it works, Eltheria says dryly. He leans back, folding his arms. You know, when I signed up to study alien languages, I thought the worst thing that could happen was mistranslating an insult. You did that once, she says. It was an accident. You called an admiral's mother a fermented root. In my defense, the word was very similar. The child lets out a small laugh then, clear and unrestrained. The sound cuts through the tension like a blade, sharp and bright. Something in Irene's chest loosens. That laugh, he says softly, that's new. The child looks pleased. You like it. I do, he admits. It's a good one. The projections shift again, timelines collapsing, reforming. Outside, the fleets hold position, waiting for a decision that has not been spoken yet. Eltheria steps closer, her voice low. If you stay, she says, there will be consequences. For you, for them. Irene looks at the child, then at the vast machinery of war beyond the glass. He thinks of the research vessel, the moon, the jokes that filled the space where certainty should have been. I'm already here, he says. That feels like a commitment. The palace hum deepens, satisfied. The child nods, as if this confirms something important. For the first time since the summons arrived, the future does not feel like it is closing in. It feels like it is waiting. Time behaves strangely after decisions that are not officially decisions. It stretches, folds, pretends to move forward while actually circling the same moment from different angles. Irene becomes aware of this when the palace announces, very politely, that the councils will convene in 17 minutes, and asks whether he would prefer water, stimulants, or something that does not yet have a human safety rating. Water, he says. I like to face destiny hydrated. A translucent container forms in his hand. He takes a sip and immediately regrets it. This tastes like optimism, he says. It is infused, Eltheria replies, with trace elements designed to stabilize emotional responses. So optimism, Irene says, aggressively. The child watches him drink with interest. You make faces when you are lying to yourself, they say. Irene coughs. That's rude. You taught me that, the child replies calmly. He stares at them. I did. Yes, on the ship, when you said everything was fine. Eltheria looks away. Irene decides not to push that particular memory just yet, mostly because it feels like stepping on a live wire labeled later. The palace hum shifts pitch. A ripple passes through the air, and suddenly they are no longer alone. Not physically, not exactly, but present in the way only advanced science fiction politics can manage. Figures resolve at the edges of perception, councils represented by layered projections and probability shadows. Irene counts at least 9 distinct power blocks and gives up when the numbers start overlapping. Hello, he says to the room at large. I'm guessing this is the part where I'm supposed to stand very still. One of the projections flickers. A voice speaks, multiplied and harmonized. Human Irene Holt, you are central to an anomaly. Story of my life, Irene says. I once caused a minor diplomatic incident with a metaphor. You caused 3, Eltheria says quietly. They were very good metaphors. The child steps forward, closer to the projections than Irene would like. The palace responds by subtly increasing the density of the air around them, a protective instinct that Irene finds both reassuring and alarming. This is unnecessary, the child says. You already know. A murmur ripples through the council projections. Irene leans toward Eltheria. They're better at this than I am, he whispers. They have had practice, she replies. A new construct forms between them, a convergence field humming with restrained energy. Irene recognizes the signature now. Lineage analysis, quantum resonance, the kind of thing that answers questions no one asks aloud. All right, he says, raising his hand slightly. Before we do anything irreversible, I'd like to point out that I did not bring a lawyer. You will not need one, the harmonized voice says. That's exactly what people say right before you need one. The field activates. Irene feels it like pressure behind his eyes, a sensation not unlike trying to remember a word that exists in 3 languages at once. The child does not flinch. Instead, they glance back at him, almost amused. It tickles, they say. Of course it does, Irene mutters. Everything important tickles. Data flows. The palace lights dim, then brighten, adjusting to calculations unfolding faster than thought. Irene's implant attempts to keep up, flashes a warning, then gives up entirely and displays a helpful icon indicating emotional significance detected. Very helpful, he whispers. The convergence field resolves with a soft chime, cheerful in a way that feels inappropriate. Silence follows, the kind that carries weight. The councils react in phases: confirmation, reassessment, rapid recalculation of political narratives. Irene watches it happen and feels strangely detached, like he's observing a lecture about someone else's life. The anomaly is confirmed, the voice says at last. The child nods, unsurprised. Eltheria exhales, slow and controlled. Irene clears his throat. So, does this mean the war pauses, or do we all just awkwardly acknowledge this and continue? There is a beat. Then, unexpectedly, a ripple of amusement moves through the projections. Your humor is inefficient, the voice says, but effective. I've been told that, Irene says, usually by people trying not to panic. The palace hum eases. Outside, the fleets hold. No new test discharges, no sudden maneuvers. Waiting again. Eltheria turns to him. For the first time since he arrived, her composure cracks just enough to let something human through. Relief, sharp and brief. You stayed, she says. He shrugs. I'm bad at leaving. The child takes his hand, this time without hesitation, and squeezes it. Irene squeezes back before realizing he's done it. Well, he says, feeling the future rearrange itself around that small gesture. This is going to be complicated. Yes, Eltheria says. The child smiles. After the councils withdraw, not with finality but with the promise of returning opinions, the palace exhales in a way Irene feels more than hears. The hum settles into something almost domestic, like a machine deciding it can stop performing for a while. The convergence field dissolves, leaving behind a faint warmth in the air, as if the truth has an aftertaste. Well, Irene says, breaking the silence because it seems polite, that went better than most academic reviews. Eltheria arches a brow. No one threatened you with exile. High praise, he replies. I once had a reviewer suggest I be reassigned to agricultural linguistics. The child snorts before they can stop themselves, then clamps a hand over their mouth, eyes wide. Irene beams. There it is, he says. The laugh again, I'm collecting those. You are distracting, the child says, but there is no heat in it. That's my primary skill, Irene says. Secondary skill is avoiding lasers. Outside, the dying sun pulses, sending a wave of light across the balcony. The fleets respond, shields adjusting, formations tightening. The war is still there, patient and enormous, but it has paused long enough for something smaller to matter. Eltheria gestures and the palace obliges by shifting them gently inward, away from the edge. Irene's chair follows, loyal to a fault. "You should rest," she says to the child. They consider this, then shake their head. "I want to stay." Irene opens his mouth, then closes it. He has opinions but not authority. Not yet, maybe never. The thought is oddly comforting. "All right," Eltheria says, "but you sit." The palace produces another chair, this one scaled perfectly. The child drops into it with satisfaction, feet swinging slightly. Irene watches, something in his chest tightening and loosening at the same time. "So," he says carefully, "what happens now?" Eltheria regards him. "Now we navigate consequences." "Ah," Irene says, "my old enemy." The child leans back, studying the ceiling as if it might offer answers. "Some of the councils will try to use you," they say. "Others will try to remove you." "That's comforting," Irene says. "I love being polarizing." "You already are," Eltheria says. He laughs softly. "Fair." A new projection flickers to life nearby, this one less formal, more adaptive. A simulation of branching outcomes, constantly rewriting itself as new variables are introduced. Irene recognizes his own presence as a destabilizing factor, represented by a bright, stubborn nod of probability. "Wow," he says, "I'm a statistical problem." "You always were," Eltheria replies. The child points. "That one," they say, indicating a branch where the fleets disperse. "That happens if you speak." Irene squints. "Just speak, no pressure." "Your voice carries weight," Eltheria says, "to them." "That's new," he says. "Usually people tune me out." The palace hums, almost amused. A distant alarm chimes softly, not urgent, just informative. The fleets are adjusting again, responding to something unseen. Irene feels the familiar itch of a linguist confronted with an unspoken language. "I could try," he says slowly. "Not a speech, just honesty. I'm better at that when I don't plan." Eltheria studies him for a long moment. "That may be the most dangerous option." "Excellent," Irene says. "I'll fit right in." The child slides off their chair and walks over, standing close enough that Irene can feel that strange resonance again, steady now, like a shared frequency finally locked in. "You won't leave," they say. "It is not a question." Irene swallows, then nods. "No, I won't." They smile, small and fierce. "Good." Outside, the war waits. Inside, something fragile and powerful takes root, threaded with bad jokes and impossible odds. Irene Holt, xenolinguist and accidental anomaly, looks at the queen, at the child, at the future unfolding in overlapping probabilities, and feels something like hope, which is frankly alarming. "Well," he says, standing a little straighter, "let's go confuse some admirals." The admirals do not look the way Irene expects. He had imagined sharper angles, louder voices, more visible menace. Instead, they appear tired, layered over with projections and authority, sitting in a chamber that feels less like a war room and more like a very expensive argument waiting to happen. The palace insists on translating the atmosphere as cautious optimism, which Irene suspects is a polite lie. He stands at the center, hands visible, heart doing something unhelpful. The child stands just behind him, close enough that the familiar resonance hums steadily, like a reminder he did not imagine any of this. Eltheria watches from the edge of the chamber, composed, present, letting him do what he came here to do. "Before anyone fires anything," Irene says, "because starting is the hardest part. I'd like to point out that we are all standing in a room designed to predict outcomes, and it is currently predicting that most of you regret your last 3 decisions." A ripple of surprise moves through the chamber. One of the admirals actually laughs, a short, startled sound as if it escaped without permission. Irene exhales. "Good. Humor still works across species. That's one constant." "I'm not a politician," he continues. "I'm a linguist. I study how meaning changes depending on who's listening. Right now, what I hear is fear dressed up as certainty, and I get it. I'm very scary on paper. The child clears their throat softly. Irene glances back. You're doing fine, they say. Thank you, he says. That helps more than you know. He turns back to the chamber. You can use me, you can threaten me. You can build entire strategies around me. Or you can do something wildly irresponsible and listen. The palace hum deepens. Probability branches flicker and collapse. Outside the fleet's hold, weapons charged but quiet. I left once, Irene says, and this time his voice does not shake. I didn't know what I was leaving. I won't make that mistake again. Not for politics, not for fear. Not for a war that starts because no one wanted to admit they cared about the outcome. Silence follows, not heavy, just attentive. One by one the admirals withdraw their projections. Orders ripple outward, formations loosen. Power signatures dim. The war does not end with a dramatic gesture. It simply runs out of momentum. Later, much later, Irene stands again on the glass balcony. The dying sun still flares, but it feels less accusatory now. The fleets are dispersing, not retreating, just choosing not to collide. The child leans against the railing, feet dangling dangerously close to the void. Irene resists the urge to grab them and settles for standing very close. You changed the probabilities, the child says. So did you, Irene replies. You're very persuasive. They grin. I learned from you. Eltheria joins them, her presence calm, grounded. The councils have agreed, she says. There will be no further claims, no reassignment, no memory locks. Irene nods. Good, I'm bad at forgetting on purpose. She studies him. You could return to your people. He considers it, really considers it, and is surprised by how clear the answer feels. I think, he says slowly, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The child reaches for his hand. He takes it without hesitation. The palace hums, satisfied. Somewhere deep within its impossible structure, the future rearranges itself, not into perfection but into something livable. Irene Holt, who once ran from uncertainty and hid behind jokes, stands at the edge of a star and does not look away. He does not know everything that comes next. He just knows he will be there for it. And for the first time, that is enough.